Korea. North Korea now wants to apparently understand more about President Trump. So government officials from Pyongyang are quietly reaching out to Republican analysts here in Washington. One of those invited to visit Pyongyang is my next guest, Bruce Klingner. He's a former CIA analyst. He's now with the Heritage Foundations. He's a top expert on North Korea. Bruce, thanks very much for joining us. Pretty extraordinary, isn't it, that North Korean officials are asking you and others to give them a better sense of who this president is?
Right. Well, of course, there have been a series of conferences over the years between North Korean officials and usually former U.S. officials or academics where we all exchange views, trying to get a better sense of the other's policy. So when we've engaged in these, they're interesting, they're useful, try to undo misperceptions or to better explain our own government's positions, although, of course, we're speaking on our own behalf. So I think certainly given the tensions currently, as well as the misunderstanding or the lack of understanding of what the other government's policies are, it makes it useful.
Have you already had a dialogue with these North Korean officials?
Well, the last time I was engaged in a conference was in June in Europe. I wrote an op-ed about it with the other Americans.
You met with North Korean diplomats or officials?
Right, with officials, right.
But since then, they've asked you for another round of meetings? They want you to go to Pyongyang?
Right.
Is that right?
Right. Well, there's a discussion about a number of outreaches to different U.S. officials, or it's just another conference in Switzerland, I think, this week with other former officials. So,
have you been to North Korea?
No, I haven't.
So are you ready to accept that invitation?
Well, of course, since September 1st, Americans aren't allowed to go without a special visa, which is usually reserved for either media or humanitarian or government officials. So always willing and eager to exchange views, to better understand their view, as well as to try to better explain what the U.S. policy is.
Do you think they do have a pretty good understanding of who this president is when he uses words like Rocket Man or Little Rocket Man, talking about Kim Jong-un, when he talks about, you know, the extent of a possible war between the United States and North Korea? Do they appreciate who this president is?
Well, I think even within Washington, a lot of us are trying to discern the parameters of the policy towards North Korea. I feel when I talk to people within the government, I get a better sense of kind of the components of a coherent strategy. I think a lot of the messaging has been contradictory, particularly about whether the U.S. is considering a preventative attack. So that's certainly an issue they would be concerned with.
Are you surprised by the rhetoric, the rhetoric from Kim Jong-un, for example, towards the United States right now, and towards specifically this president?
Well, we have to keep in mind that North Korea has always used very over-the-top language. They used very racist comments about President Obama, very sexist comments about Ambassador Nikki Haley, as well as the previous South Korean president, Park Geun-hye.
So you're not that surprised?
It's, I think, in tune with what they've done. The recent statement by Kim Jong-un personally was pretty unprecedented. So whether they are actually going to implement sort of the vowed thermonuclear test over the Pacific, I think is a low probability, but I think it's almost certain that eventually they will do a long-range ICBM test that will fly over Japan.
You spent a career first at the CIA, now at a think tank, studying North Korea. How worried should we all be?
North Korea, or the Korean Peninsula, is always on the knife edge of a crisis. The tensions are always high. My concern is not that Kim Jong-un is erratic or irrational and that he'll just launch a war. My concern is either an escalation from a tactical situation going to a strategic confrontation or miscalculation.
And that miscalculation is a big, big fear right now on either side, because the tension level is pretty enormous.
Exactly. And when you have really all three components, South Korea, North Korea, the U.S., all saying that they're leaning further forward on preemption, then you could have a stumbling across a red line.
And if you get the waiver from the State Department saying you can go to North Korea, are you there?
Well, I think we also have to be concerned with the treatment of Otto Warmbier and other Americans that are still detained there.
It's not an easy decision by any means. All right, thanks so much, Bruce Klingner of the Heritage Foundation.